Hey everyone, so have you ever been there? You spent hours coding the perfect indicator in PineScript, you load it up onto your chart, and poof, nothing. It just mysteriously fails on the first few bars. It's incredibly frustrating, right? Well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we are going to hunt down the silent killer that's been wrecking your indicators. So let's pull back the curtain and expose what's really going on.
This is the big question, isn't it? The one that probably brought you here. Why does a script that looks perfectly fine just break down at the very beginning of a chart? And the worst part is, there are no errors, no warnings, it just silently fails. It's a real head-scratcher, but the answer is actually simpler than you'd think.
And there it is, the core of the problem, the entire mystery. It all boils down to this one simple concept, a problem of missing history. Your script is trying to look back in time, right? But on those first few bars, it's looking back to a place where time just didn't exist yet for the chart, and PineScript has a very specific way of handling that empty space.
We're calling this the silent script killer, and trust me, it has earned the name. This isn't a bug that's gonna scream at you or throw up a big red error message. No, this one's sneaky. It just quietly poisons your calculations from the inside out, making your entire indicator completely unreliable.
And here's how the poison spreads. PineScript uses this special value called NA whenever data is missing. You can think of it as a calculation black hole. Seriously. If an NA value so much as touches any part of your math, addition, division, you name it, the entire result gets sucked in and becomes NA2. It just keeps propagating forward, silently corrupting everything in its path.
So to really get a handle on this, we need to meet the two main characters in this story. First, there's the NA value itself. And second, there's the operator that creates it all the time, the history referencing operator, which looks like a pair of square brackets. If you can master these two, you'll have this bug beat.
Let's start with NAB. It's just short for not available. Now, if you've done any programming in other languages, this will feel familiar. You can think of it just like not a number or NaN. It's basically a placeholder for data that just isn't there. It's a value that represents a void.
Okay, listen up, because this is a huge deal, especially for anyone moving code to PineScript version 6. In the old days, a Boolean variable could be true, false, or NA. It was kind of confusing. V6 completely got rid of that. Now Booleans are strictly true or false, period. If you even try to assign NA to a Boolean, you'll get a compilation error. The bottom line is, your old logic might break, and this is why.
And here's our second character, the history referencing operator. I absolutely love this analogy. Think of it as your script's own personal time machine. When you write something like close 1, you're not asking for the first bar on the chart. You're asking for the closing price of the bar right before the one your script is currently looking at. It's a totally dynamic, relative lookup into the past.
Now, this brings us to a key technical detail that might sound a bit nerdy but is super important: operator precedence. The square bracket operator has a precedence of 9, which is the highest. What that really means is, before PineScript does any math, any comparisons, any logic at all, it resolves all of your time machine lookups first. You have to keep this in mind when you're writing complex, one-line calculations.
Now, using this powerful time machine comes with some very strict rules you got to follow. First off, you can't chain it. Something like close 1, 1 is just going to give you an error. If you want to look back 2 bars, you just write close 2. Simple. Also, here's another V6 change for you. If you're using custom user-defined types, you have to wrap the lookup in parentheses first and then access the field, just like you see here.
Okay, so we've met our characters, NA and the square bracket operator. Now for the dramatic climax. Let's see what happens when these two collide. This is the exact moment where our silent killer is born.
So, when does your time machine actually fail and give you back that dreaded NaN value? Well, the most common scenario is right at the beginning of the chart. If you're on bar number 5 and you ask for close 10, there's nothing there. It also happens during what we call warm-up periods for indicators. A 50-period moving average can't possibly give you a real value until the 50th bar has passed. And you can even see it happen right in the middle of a chart if there are data gaps from things like trading holidays.
This creates a domino effect that just perfectly illustrates the problem. Let's walk through it. Say your script is running on bar number 5. You ask for the close from 10 bars ago. Well, since that bar doesn't exist, the operator returns NA. Now your calculation, which looks perfectly fine, tries to add the current close to NA, and what's the result? NA.
That NA value is then plotted or it gets used in the next calculation, and just like that, the whole thing falls apart.
But hey, don't worry, this isn't a lost cause. PineScript actually gives you the tools you need to build a safety net, one that can catch these NA values before they can do any damage. So let's take a look at the functions that are about to become your new best friends. Your NA toolkit basically has two primary tools. First up is the NA function. It's a simple check. You pass it a value, and it tells you true if that value is NA, and false if it isn't. Easy. The second one is NZ. This one is all about substitution. It checks a value, and if it's not, it replaces it with a fallback value that you provide, like 0. If the value is fine, it just returns the original.
So the big question is, when do you use which one? It's pretty simple, actually. You use NA when you need to make a decision. Think, if this value is NA, then do this, otherwise do that. It's for branching your logic. You use NISA when you just need to keep the math from breaking. You don't need any special logic. You just want to substitute any missing values with a safe default, like 0 or maybe the previous bar's value, to keep the calculation running smoothly.
All right, we have totally nailed the fundamentals. Now let's get into some pro tips for writing modern, robust, and really professional-grade code. We're going to focus specifically on some of the stricter rules in PineScript version 6 that you need to know about. So this is another really big change in v6. You've got these special built-in values called unique type constants, things like a plot style or a label location. In v5, you could accidentally have a condition that resulted in NA, and your script would just silently fail. Not anymore. In v6, that's a compilation error. The takeaway is simple. If you have an if or switch statement that's supposed to return one of these special types, it must have a default branch to guarantee it never ever returns NA. Now here is a fantastic piece of advice for writing clean and efficient code. Anytime you're dealing with a value from the past, especially one you need to check and then use multiple times, the absolute best practice is to evaluate it just once and store it in a variable.
And here's exactly why that matters in practice. Look at the code on the left. We're calling close 20 3 separate times. That's 3 trips in the time machine. On the right, though, we do the lookup just once. We store it in that prev20 variable, and then we just reuse that variable. It's so much cleaner, way easier to read, and it's much more performant, especially if it's inside a complex loop.
So, what should you do next? Here is your action plan. First, if you have old scripts, go audit them for those v5 specific NA behaviors we talked about. For all your new code, get in the habit of adding NA guards around any historical lookups. And this one's crucial. Test your scripts on different timeframes. A script that works fine on a daily chart might fall apart on a 1-minute chart where there's way less history.
And that really brings us to our final question. After everything we've gone over today, I want you to take a hard look at your own scripts and ask yourself, are they truly production ready? Because by learning to handle non-values correctly, you're making the jump from writing amateur scripts to building professional, reliable trading tools that you can count on every single time. That's all for this explainer. Happy coding!